Hi everyone, I'm Christina Lopez on the campus of UC Berkeley. In the world of television, there are many people who work behind the camera that make stories come to life. Today we'll talk with 4 producers and reporters from the University of California, Berkeley, who tell stories from the Bay and beyond.
Hi, my name is Tianye, but people in the US call me Major. I grew up in a Chinese city where my grandparents used to have chickens in their backyard. But later they got rid of them because the city became more and more modern. Now I live in the Bay Area, and having livestock inside city limits is the latest trend.
My name is Camila McDonald, and I became a personal trainer in Jamaica to play my part in tackling the obesity epidemic affecting mostly low-income neighborhoods. Not surprisingly, coming and reporting in Richmond, I've come across some of the same issues. Let's take a look at what they're doing about it.
Are we rolling?
Rolling.
Can we get a shot of the boots? Great. Hi, I'm Patty Espinosa. You're probably wondering why I'm wearing cowboy boots in California. Well, that's because I'm from the greatest state ever. That's right, I'm from Texas. I went home to meet a few cattle ranchers who are struggling to survive the worst drought in Texas history.
And I'm Faye Bulgasim. As a Sudanese American, it always takes me a little longer to get through the airport than your average Jane. But I've never had it as bad as Yasser Afifi, a young Egyptian American who went to the mechanic one day and found a device that would change his life.
So sit back, lean forward, whatever. Enjoy the show. But first, Major Chin takes us to the backyards of Oakland.
The goats really like attention. They like to go for walks. So it's like dogs, except you get milk and you can make cheese. This is a piece of feta cheese that I made. And this is smoked salt, hickory salt that I put on it for part of the curing, and it's amazing and delicious. And
Jeannie McKenzie has 8 goats, 6 chickens, a garden, a pond, and a beehive. A small walking farm, one of many around here, inside the city limits of Oakland.
And then this is Cape gooseberry. And the Cape gooseberries are another perennial that are just amazing. This is its 2nd year, and it's just constant supply. I just come out here and graze in my garden. That's how I eat a lot of times.
While urban farming is welcomed by a food-savvy and economically stressed community, there are some kinks to work out.
I was concerned that we hadn't properly vetted the issue and didn't realize that we were actually allowing for animals in the urban agriculture. And so when
Commissioner Michael Cabruno warns that bringing farm animals into Oakland may cause unexpected problems.
So we don't know about disease vectors, for one. We don't know about what if an animal gets sick, what if it has some sort of a disease, do we know how to handle that? Do the people in Montclair want pigs being slaughtered next door and squealing while they're trying to put their babies to sleep?
It wasn't a slaughtered pig, but a sick goat that caused trouble between Mackenzie and her neighbor.
It was really just horrible. She was screaming at 3 o'clock in the morning, and we're like calling the vets and looking on the internet to try to figure out what we can do for her. And like, we did the right things, but not enough. The goat died that morning at like 6 in the morning. And then my neighbor, who complains regularly about the goats, tape recorded the goat dying and took it down to the planning commission and said, these people are torturing their goats, they're feeding them bad feed and, letting them eat out of garbage cans and throwing, trash down for them to eat. And it's like, no, that's not what's happening.
Mackenzie's neighbor declined to speak on camera, but said she had been annoyed by the smell and noise of the goats for a long time. Still, there's a lot of support inside City Hall.
And there's a big push right now to increase access to community gardens and urban farms so that people can connect more directly with the source of their food.
Aaron Lamer of the Oakland Food Policy Council says the city should change its regulations to accommodate this trend.
There are a lot of conflicting and vague rules and zoning regulations that are on the books here in Oakland that make it a really confusing and uncertain environment for urban farmers and community gardeners who want to start their own projects.
Such projects have spread to areas close to downtown, like this small farm near Lake Merritt.
My family, I'm Mexican American, and my family, our agricultural history is pretty rich. I come from a farming family. So it was a way for me to really connect with family tradition. That's how it started, and when I made that connection, it felt strong. When I first started, I was growing predominantly vegetables, and I had planted some fruit trees. When I was learning about growing food, I was also learning about the benefit of using manure, and I was learning about how keeping bees to pollinate, and also for the honey. And I immediately started thinking that I would like to incorporate this into an integrated approach with growing food.
Having animals that are cared for in your community and then being able to have the opportunity to, to raise them and process them for your own family, it's far preferable, I think, than to rely on huge corporate consolidated enterprises that could care not one whit about the welfare of the animal.
But for another group of animal lovers, the urban livestock trend may be a threat to the wild creatures that live in the Bay Area.
We get a lot of phone calls from members of the public that are raising chickens or other livestock in their backyard, and they're encountering conflicts with raccoons, foxes, or coyotes coming in looking for a meal. We're concerned people in the public will take matters into their own hands, start trapping raccoons or trapping foxes, which is never a good idea.
This baby raccoon got his leg stuck in a backyard fence.
Often if the raccoon's in your backyard, it's because he's been lured by something, either cat food on the back steps or fallen fruit underneath the fruit trees. It is broke.
While the raccoon is being treated, a skunk caught by a rat trap arrives.
Their backyard had berry bushes, a shed, water source, tomatoes, fruit trees, and so even catching one rat is not gonna, there's more that are gonna come in. So we kind of talked over why you shouldn't use poison, why traps, if you're gonna use them, should be maybe in the shed instead of outside in the backyard.
Speranza Polana is doing her best. She keeps her chickens in a wired cage, away from the predators. For her, keeping livestock is a big responsibility.
It is definitely a lifestyle change. So if you want to go away on vacation, you have to make sure and find care for the animals. You can't put feeders out that have several days worth of food because you could attract rodents that way.
Over the next few months, the public will have more chances to discuss the issue at the city's public hearings.
I think there's really good movement.
Hi, Riley.
I'm very proud to live in Oakland where this is happening.
Yasser Afifi is a 21-year-old Egyptian American born and raised in Santa Clara, California. He is a student who loves basketball, but last year, something happened that even the best defense could not have prepared for.
And it was placed right over here on the metal side of the car.
He found something strange underneath his car, a GPS tracking device. But he didn't know who could have placed it underneath his car. He and his friends took pictures of the device and put it up on a tech blog.
Once we placed that blog on Reddit, within the hour we had over 3,300 comments telling, a lot of information, a lot of feedback, a lot of opinions.
2 days later, the FBI came knocking on his door, asking for what turned out to be their device, and they wanted it back.
His voice was very loud, his tone was very harsh, and he kept telling me, hey, we need the device right now, we need you to cooperate and whatnot, and I replied saying, I am fully cooperating with you, I'm answering all of your questions, and I'm being very straightforward, and I don't understand why you're being frustrated. So he started asking me some random questions like, have you ever been to Syria or Iran or Yemen for any type of Islamic or religious military training, or are you affiliated with any type of extreme organizations or whatnot? And I replied, absolutely not, and I don't know anybody that is. To that, they told me, hey, thank you very much for your cooperation. Sorry to bother you, you're boring. They shook my hand and they left.
The FBI did contact him after that, but Yasser refused to speak without a lawyer present. He hasn't heard from them since.
Yeah, you're cooking it to make
She makes
sure.
the food taste good.
Today, Yasser is married and trying to get on with his life. He tells me that the incident with the GPS is not the first contact he's had with the FBI. They called 6 months earlier based on an anonymous tip.
I just need to sit down, talk with you, ask you a couple of questions, and we'll just close this file and put it to the side. And I go, sure, I'm more than happy to cooperate as long as my lawyer tells me that that's the right thing to do. And so I shut the phone after that, and I gave my lawyer a call, and then my lawyer told me, absolutely not. You don't have to answer any questions. You don't have
In
to.
California, it is legal for the FBI to track anyone without a warrant, as long as they are in a public space. But why would the FBI track Yasser? I spoke to James Weddick, a former FBI agent with 30 years' experience in the field, and he has testified in many terrorism cases.
People who don't warrant investigation can come to the attention of the FBI because somebody has overheard something, and because they think it's their duty, they'll pick up the phone and they'll notify the agency about somebody doing something. It happens all the time, and we know that. And we know that a lot of times the information we receive concerns good citizens who have no intention of violating the law. And so, at the same time, we'll also get that information. We have an obligation and a duty to verify or corroborate that.
Yasser has been replaying the scenario in his mind, trying to sort out why he might have come under suspicion.
It's not clear until now, but I may just fit some type of profile to the FBI, being that I'm an American Muslim. I lived alone during this incident. All my family was overseas in Egypt. I was in constant contact with Egypt, my brothers, my family. I was transferring money to them overseas for their schooling, their tuition. I also traveled to Egypt maybe once or twice a year to visit them. Other than that, it's unclear. I'm still trying to figure that out myself.
His brothers were as shocked as he was when the device was found underneath Yasser's car.
I'm like, what? Are you talking for real? He's like, yeah, this, and this happened. I'm like, why? He's like, I have no idea. I'm like, wait, I mean, you go to school, you go back, you chill, what do you do wrong? He's like, I don't know.
I know that I'm not doing anything wrong.
He knows. I know he's not doing anything wrong.
Yasser has filed a lawsuit against the FBI for the violation of his Fourth Amendment rights. Zahra Bilu, the executive director of CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, has taken on his case.
So the basis of our objection to the GPS tracking device being used in Yasser's case without a warrant is essentially that a warrant is not required if a police officer wants to follow someone in their car. However, the difference between a police officer following someone and a GPS tracking device being placed on their car is that the tracking device is sort of a continuous following, right? It's a 24-hour surveillance. It follows them everywhere they go. And that's not something that a law enforcement agency or a police officer would do in a personal capacity. And so we make the distinction about how these rules need to be reevaluated as technology changes.
And of course,
Weddick acknowledges that putting a tracking device in someone's car could be a violation of privacy.
what we have here are competing interests. We have the government, who is interested in conducting an investigation because they might suspect that somebody might be engaging in terrorist-type activities, and so they have a need to conduct an investigation. And of course, at the same time, we have an individual's right to they have an expectation of privacy, and so those two interests have to be matched.
Yasser has been trying to cope with what happened to him last fall. He has applied to several jobs, but this GPS case still haunts him.
I'm a good salesman, but when it comes to a great company, they, some of let's say an employer just Googles my name, they'll find out that the FBI was investigating me, And most of the time they don't want to hire somebody that the FBI was investigating prior.
Ironically, Yasser says he's found more support from Americans than he has from Arabs and Muslims.
The American society has been more supportive than the Arab society all in all, because the average American Joe feels frustrated to know that they can be tracked in California without a search warrant. And I hope that my case will help change this so that it will better qualify these suspects to have at least a search warrant against them, to have such authority to use against American citizens. And I hope that the court also agrees with that.
Yasser's case is awaiting a Supreme Court verdict on a similar case. But until then, he hopes his life will rebound.
Texas. It's big, it's hot, it's cattle country. Texas is the #1 exporter of cattle in the United States, but ranching here isn't just a business, it's a way of life. The problem is that Texas is suffering one of its worst droughts ever, and the heat is making it near impossible for cattlemen to keep their herd healthy enough for market. Rain clouds can blanket the sky, but not a drop falls. It's Texas torture. This summer, temperatures hit triple digits for weeks at a time. Wildfires torched more than 3 million acres across the state, destroyed thousands of homes, and killed hundreds of ranch and farm animals. Texas Governor Rick Perry turned to prayer. Earlier this year, the Republican presidential candidate called on the faithful to join him in praying for rain in Texas. But climatologists predict that the harsh, dry conditions in Texas could last for years. Computer models show that extreme weather conditions like this are going to intensify. The Texas drought is the worst since the Dust Bowl of the 1930s that forced millions of Americans to flee the Midwest. The current drought is once again forcing some ranchers to rethink their way of life.
I wish I had a cup of water. I could show you something.
Johnny Kozad is a lifelong rancher in South Texas, but his 5,000-acre spread has no livestock anymore at all. Back in 1998, during another terrible Texas drought, Kozad and his wife were forced to move their cattle off the ranch.
When I did move cattle off this ranch, I vowed that I would never bring cattle back on this ranch until I had the infrastructure set up to where running cattle on the ranch would be less stressful to the animal as well as to the people that are taking care of them. Rainfall hits this. You hear that?
Now, 13 years later, Kozad is rebuilding his cattle business from scratch. The biggest challenge is making the dry Texas ground viable, which means changing the way cattle ranching is done.
Okay, rainfall hits that. It just kind of runs off, see? Right. And it's going to evaporate very quickly, okay? Right. Because there's nothing on top of the ground to cover it.
His solution is to cover the soil with mulch that absorbs and holds the water.
This is going to capture much more water than an area like this.
In trying to make his ranch drought resistant, Kozad also plans to develop 96 pastures on the ranch for some 200 head of cattle. That way, the cows can graze several areas with fresh grass.
It's like going to a salad bar. If you go to the salad bar and it's a fresh salad, well, if the salad's been out there for 2 days, you're not going to eat too much the second day. Same thing with cattle. When the animals enter a pasture, they're going to get the ice cream on that grass, the top energy level on that grass, and then you want them to go to a fresh area.
But Kozad's plan won't work without rain. And so far this year, he's only had 6 inches of it, the lowest rainfall in over 20 years.
It is a time when you do experience a certain level of stress, and you do wonder, Lord, when is it going to rain again?
While the drought is forcing other ranchers out of business, some are still convinced they can prosper.
At times like this where it's so dry, there's only one way to go but up, so we're very optimistic about the future.
Victor Guerra works on his family's 200-year-old ranch. He believes young ranchers will help keep the cattle industry in Texas alive. So, every year, he hosts the La Muñeca Junior Roundup. It's a field day for children involved in 4-H and the future farmers of America. Kids come to the event to learn about the cattle industry, focusing on how to properly raise cattle and feed the right hay.
Utilizing these cattle as a tool to teach these kids several different lessons in life, such as responsibility, and also that they're going to go through some hard times in life, whether it be, as a cattleman going through the drought or just, personal setbacks.
Guerra says the drought is forcing him to work harder to keep the cattle healthy. In the meantime, selling cattle to the families of future ranchers at events like this is a way to keep him in business. But even Guerra is struggling to hang on, and like so many others, is praying for rain.
Pray. We've been praying a lot for rain and just have to pray to get through these tough times. Hopefully it'll be the end of it.
But so far, hope and prayer haven't been enough. Cows like these can be seen everywhere in South Texas. Their tails are sunken in, their hip bones and ribs stick out. This is what is giving ranchers nightmares. Fred Grumman has already been forced to sell off a third of his herd.
I fear that I'm going to have to start selling some of my very productive cows, those that are 5 or 6 years old, and that'll be a very serious decision. I hope it doesn't come to that, but it very well may.
Like other ranchers, Grumman's biggest problem is that he doesn't have enough grass for his cattle to eat. He's keeping them alive by feeding them hay, 6 months earlier than normal.
That is a tremendous expense because of the drought, and there's nothing out there for the cow.
The price of hay has skyrocketed. A bale of hay that used to cost $30 is now averaging about $150.
We don't know when it's going to rain, so I started in July feeding when I normally start in December, and I watched the weather, and they say it's not going to rain till next February. Well, I hope I don't run out of hay.
If prices continue to increase, Grumman may be forced to give up the rest of his herd. The conditions in Texas are grim. Just a bit of rain could make all the difference to these cattlemen. But until it does rain, all they can do is hope and wait.
I want to lose weight because when I was pregnant of my daughter Bexida, I had it with her diabetes. So the doctor told me that I have to eat healthy, do exercise.
Mayra Rodriguez lives in the center of the Iron Triangle neighborhood, raising 3 children on her own. Her husband was recently deported to Mexico.
No, Sullivan. Like right now I'm struggling a lot because he's not here. And when he was here, he used to work, and with my money, his money, we would buy the things together.
The Iron Triangle is infamous for its high crime rate, yet one of the most personally devastating problems is the high rates of obesity in this neighborhood.
Along with that comes diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, some forms of cancer, and other chronic diseases.
Jan Schilling is a nutritionist and part of the HEAL program, which focuses on bringing affordable, healthy eating and active living to low-income and at-risk communities.
When you've got the fast food industry that's selling big Whoppers at low prices, and parents are busy and sometimes they like to go out to eat, and they will choose those great big Whoppers, some of which are close to 2,000 calories themselves, which is 2,000 calories is about what an average woman should eat every day. We are in a limited income area, and so they may not be able to afford the wide 24-hour fitness gold gym or curves.
This is one way to combat obesity, an experiment, one of 6 taking place in low-income cities and neighborhoods across Northern California.
Because when we're in our apartment, they think about their dad, and they want him to come back, and they get stressed out. So what I do, I just come to the park and let them, stress out themselves. And they like to come here, and they love to play.
Ready? Okay, hold on. Stopwatch. Set.
The program sponsored by Kaiser allows parents like Mayra to take her children to the neighborhood park, just 3 blocks away from her home. It looks like just play, but has been carefully designed to teach the kids about healthy eating and living while still having fun.
They can show them how to eat healthy and be healthy so they cannot be overweight.
Gonzalo, so your last score was 25-43. That's what you're going to try to beat. You need to get rid of those in your mouth first. Good job, and weave around, jump over, and straddle, and time. They get a pretty good workout. We do everything from push-ups to pull-ups. We use all the equipment on the monkey bars. We run, they do track and drill skills. So they get basically everything that they need. This is a good program for our area, and our kids need it. Stop the break. Diego, did you get some?
Not only do they offer obesity prevention for the kids, but the program called HEAL, Healthy Eating, Active Living, recently introduced Way of Life to the Nevin Community Center for the adults. While the children play, the moms get a great workout.
And they take care, their daycare provided for the parents that bring their babies, and they take care of the babies while the moms are doing the exercise. And that's a good moment for me by myself. Now I can get strong and play with my kids. I don't want to be overweight and they can not play with their kids. And I don't want to be gone in that situation.
Thanks for watching. That's our show. I'm Christina Lopez. Here's a look at some stories we're working on for next time.
Fingers, elbows, hips, and ankles, eyes and ears and mouth and nose, head, shoulders, knees.
We found out that he was behind, but they couldn't tell. They didn't know what it was. Physically, he seemed behind, but cognitively, he seemed like he was just right there with us.
Do a little bit more. You do a little bit more.
No, tell me.
Yes.
You do?
Victor being able to take an iPod Touch to school on his iPad and using that at school to communicate is just a wonderful thing. So Verbal Victor is an app that turns iPhones and iPads into communication devices. And the way it works is it uses pictures and sound to help people who have communication and speech disabilities communicate. Having a diagnosis of Pitt-Hopkins syndrome doesn't mean that you're going to be sad the rest of your life. It's not. In fact, you can be even happier than you were before. I take Victor to school every morning. The first thing he does is he hears the birds, he looks at the flowers, touches them, and it's a lesson to make you realize that that's what matters, every day, is that happiness. Maybe we wouldn't appreciate it, if it wasn't for him.
What we really want is for kids to be nurtured and obtain the very best kinds of health habits that they can so that their brains work well in school.
But what happens if low-income communities don't have access to these kinds of resources or don't even feel safe going to their own neighborhood park?
This particular park is just a couple blocks off 23rd Street, which has a long history of having a high prostitution rate.
We're most certainly not sitting on our heels watching the world go by. We're very active and aggressive towards improving our parks.
Find out next about new studies showing the direct relationship between poor park conditions, violence, and high obesity rates, and more importantly, exactly what Richmond is doing about it.
And this is my first time, ever get involved working with U.S. military.
I just questioned where, politically I would stand, or, with my beliefs, where I would stand. I didn't know what the military was aiming for in, Afghanistan.
The Afghan community is still figuring it out. What is our position in the American dream? Some feel that, yeah, I mean, this is a great thing to do. We're serving America and we're serving Afghanistan. At the same time, you have those who believe that, you know, this is not necessarily an honorable job because you're taking the side of, if we may, an oppressor.
What are you doing there?
Like this woman in the mirror.
What is going on?
She is
How
wondering.
is that?
There's a woman in the window that's wondering like what the fuck is going on.
Hey everyone, I'm really proud of the teamwork that we've done throughout this semester, and let's just make this the best show that we can possibly make.
So excited! Let's do this. Texas. I went home to meet a few cattle ranchers who are struggling to survive the worst Texas drought since not the Great Depression. Sorry, guys.
And I became a personal trainer in Jamaica to play my part in combating. I became a personal trainer in Jamaica to play my part in tackling the obesity epidemic. Again, they're in Jamaica to do my part. Oh my God, what is this?
Okay,
Ready?
just finish it out.
All right, we're good.
I'm not gonna hit you. I'm just testing. Okay. No.
Ready when you are.
Okay. Just help me out, Carly. I want to look as good as you.
Where's Hunter?
Hunter, makeup.
Hunter's good at here. Take it anymore. I'm numb.
I'm in the beach.
All right, I'm rolling.